Welcome to Sportishness. First week of the playoffs.
Not the pre-offs.
Not the pre-offs. This is the real deal.
This could be the pre-playoffs.
Now, I know there might be several million people that are wondering why I've changed hats this week. This is in tribute to Ray Lewis, and it's especially Ray Lewis like the way I have it over my eyebrows, because, you know, Ray Lewis's eyebrows get cold. I have it on good authority, actually, from the Baltimore locker room. So, anyway, he's apparently going to retire after 17 years after these playoffs. So,
and going right to the broadcast booth. I think he's closing a deal with NBC.
Yeah. Yeah, so pretty exciting. You know, it's tough to see a guy like that go, but, you know, I have a feeling that having ripped both triceps, I mean, that's got to be a hard injury to come back from, especially a man with that skill level. And also it just kind of points out that maybe his body's getting a little old at this point,
sure.
You know? So, anyway.
And legitimately his team is... Last shots probably this year, they're getting pretty cranky. The whole team's getting creaky.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they're not too far away from a rebuild.
Yep, I would agree.
All right, so we thought we would talk about each of the four games in turn, actually in order of their appearance on TV.
Okay.
So first game that I see is Cincinnati versus Houston Saturday morning. John, what do you have to say about that wonderful
Well, the
game?
Texans have been on the slide.
Yes.
I mean, they were locked in the first place 5 weeks ago. Then they were starting to look a little iffy in first. And then last week at the pre-offs, they fell completely off the wagon. And a game they knew they had to win against a team they had just destroyed 3 weeks before.
I know.
So I'm not 100% sure where the Texans are at. The Texans have played a pretty hard schedule. They have played, of the teams that are in the playoffs, they've played 7 of them, NFC and AFC.
Mm-hmm.
So they've got one of the deeper amounts of experience this year,
right,
about having already played the teams. But I just don't know where they're at. They're in a bit of a slump. The Bengals have played hard all the way up to the last week or two of the season. Then they got kind of iffy themselves. So this game could go either way. I think the Texans win this one. I think they're going to pull it together and manage to drive out a win just because the Bengals have been shaky, especially against Pittsburgh this last week or two.
Well, you know, I have 4 thoughts. In fact, I kind of try to confine myself to 4 thoughts for each team in each game.
That's 3 more than I have a day.
Right. On the Cincinnati side, I think it's important, that they've, won the last 4 out of 5. So, they seem to, have been, at least on wins losses, versus Houston, they've only won 2 out of the last 5. That's part of their slide.
Right.
But, I think in terms of this game, I think Dalton and their O-line has demonstrated the ability last season and this to contain Houston's pass rush. I went back and looked at some YouTube footage and saw that for some reason Houston made an adjustment in their contest against these guys. I think this will be the 5th time in 2 years that they've met.
Okay.
And they've gone from a 5-man pass rush to a 4-man pass rush because apparently Dalton was actually burning them on a 5-man pass rush.
Okay.
So I think, and Dalton was still, holding up pretty well. In fact, the more pressure they seem to Houston puts on him, the better he seems to do.
Okay.
Statistically. Number 2, their 4-man pass rush, that is Cincinnati's on defense, is second only to the Broncos in terms of hurrying the quarterback, getting a result of hurrying a quarterback, laying hands on the quarterback, reducing the completion percentage of the quarterback. I've got some concerns about Ellis Green, their running back's health. They need him. I mean, he's not a great running back, but he's a good journeyman. They need him to really step up to open up the passing game, right?
Right.
And A.J. Green, their best wide receiver threat, who is very good, Houston has shown an ability to actually contain him out on the edges.
Okay.
In the middle of the field, not so much, but they can shut him down on the edges for some reason.
Okay.
On the Houston side, Schaub, he's only had 1 pass for a touchdown in 4 games.
Really? That I didn't know. So.
And in their last 9 trips to the red zone, they've only had 2 field goals and 2 touchdowns.
I kind of got the feeling they coasted their way through the final and thought even the Colts would be an easy pushover.
Right. Now, I also believe that J.J. Watt has been kind of quiet, unimpressive the last few games. And Andre Johnson, while he is a great wide receiver, they really don't, I don't think, have a lot of depth. You know, when you look at the number of receptions that their receiver core is getting, he's like 2.5 times more receptions than anybody else in their lineup. So if Cincinnati can focus on him, I think that Cincinnati has a chance of shutting down the pass game.
Okay.
So also, Adrian Foster, their running back, Houston's running back, apparently had a heart arrhythmia. He's been cleared now, but, you know,
sure,
who knows what that means.
Okay, so I'm thinking Texans, you're thinking Bengals.
I'm thinking Bengals. I'm thinking 24-14 Cincinnati.
All right.
And I think the pass defense, Cincinnati's pass defense, might be the critical difference.
Okay, I would not disagree with that. It's a tough game to call.
Yeah.
If it was 4 weeks ago, I would say that as well as the Bengals have been playing, the Texans had played so many quality teams that they seemed, I don't say unstoppable, but against a six-round team or a six-seeded team, it just didn't seem like that was going to happen. Now, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that game's a coin flip in my mind.
I think it's going to be a fun game to watch, frankly.
Sure.
Because, basically, Houston, they met last year in the first round of the playoffs, Houston and Cincinnati. And Houston, of course, won that game.
Right.
So I think, Dalton is not going to be, a nervous Nelly rookie. That they know that they can face each other and that they have an, even odds chance. And I think it's going to be a good, solid game.
Sure.
I'm excited by this game.
Yes.
Totally excited.
And a side note here is that, something that we were talking about last week that is solidified for this week is, and we posted this on the website, every team in the playoff deserves to be here.
Yes.
And every team here legitimately has a chance at the crown this year.
Yeah.
So all the games should be good just based on that. There are no teams in here that should be completely destroyed, with potentially the exception of the Falcons, but I don't think we have to talk about them until next week. So.
All right.
So the second team we wanted to talk about was the Packers and Vikings. And this is a division game. Basically, they've played each other weeks 13. They played each other in week 17, and now they're going to play each other in week 18. Traditionally, in the NFL, playoff division games are bloody.
Yes.
The teams know each other, and they're both obviously good, or they wouldn't be in the playoffs. So they've split this series this year, 1-1. Mm-hmm. The first one was low scoring. The second one was high scoring. Given the fact that they're playing each other in 2 consecutive weeks, traditionally lends itself to a much more offense-happy game. But who's going to win this one? I don't know. The Packers have been playing soft. The Vikings have played a very tough schedule to get in. They've got a lot of momentum. So this is, I think, a case of the underdog Vikings coming on late, playing the Packers, who have just been pretty much solidly decent this season.
Well, Green Bay is, one of 2 teams that we've talked about, the quarterback, which quarterback's going to show up, one of them's Joe Flacco, and of course...
No. Don't mention him.
Okay. But
Romo.
Romo! I think, though, that the story of last game... When I looked at the stats, I think Green Bay let Christian Ponder look like a better quarterback than he is. By the way, one interesting little bit is, do you realize that 3 of the quarterbacks in the playoffs this year are rookies, and another 2 are second-year players? So there are 5 players who are just babies in their career, right?
Sure.
Out of 12.
That speaks to the quality of the quarterback draft these last 2 years. It's been phenomenal. It's been, like I said before, people are going to talk about these last couple of years of draft for a very long time.
Absolutely.
This is a class of '86 style draft.
I don't think, however, they're going to be talking much about Christian Ponder.
Okay.
Because of the 5, guys that are, in the playoffs that are, second year or rookie players,
right,
he is statistically the worst. And as many people have noted, if the Vikes didn't have Adrian Peterson, they would be the Detroit Lions. We wouldn't even be talking about them.
Fair
but enough. I think Green Bay last week let Ponder be a better quarterback because he actually had the best statistical game of his career, let alone a single game. I mean, it was pretty amazing. Adrian Peterson. I mean, he has performed well, and he's going to have to perform well again. But the thing about it is that Green Bay also let Adrian Peterson be better than he normally is by not sealing the edges. Anytime Adrian Peterson gets out on the edges, it is over for most teams.
Okay.
So, of course, Minnesota has been on a hot streak. They've won 4 out of their last 5. And I have a feeling that they may be inclined, because they've met so many, this is the 3rd meeting in just a few weeks. I think they may be inclined to overthink their coaching. So I'm looking for some changes there. And on the Green Bay side, Rodgers has had a solid year, and he's going to have to even step it up further. They've got no real rush threat, but they have got a 3 wide receiver set that has been given the league fits. When they apply that kind of paradigm to their playing, in a game. They got to keep Adrian Peterson inside. Because that's the only way they're going to have success. They did that in the first game. They didn't do it in the second meeting. They got to do it in the third one. Okay. And they've got to shut down Ponder's long passes. So the secondary is going to have to step up. The good news on this, though, is Charles Woodson, their star safety, is coming back.
Okay. So I think for this game, it's a matter of the home field advantage. The home team has won the series this year. They're going to be playing at the Packers.
Right.
It's going to be cold.
Yes, it is.
That field is going to be frozen. And the game definitely changes in those situations. Green Bay's used to it, and I don't think the Vikes are.
Well, I mean, the Vikings play in a domed stadium, so you know.
So I think
they're hothouse flowers.
I think this is a definite home field advantage game. I think the Packers maybe edge this one out, but I look for this to be a brutal game.
I'm looking for the Packers to win too. I'm looking for it to be a 34-27 in Green Bay's defense, in Green Bay's favor, and I think it's going to be Green Bay's defense that's going to make the difference.
Okay.
Well, then the first game of Sunday is going to be Indianapolis against Baltimore. What are your thoughts there?
So Ray Lewis is coming back for the Ravens. This is potentially, from this point on, he's playing the last game of the season. Right. Every game he gets on the field now is his last game.
I know. It's going to be like, movie, trumpets and montages every 5 seconds, and about how everybody in his entire life died in a tragic, train wreck and came back to life and then died again.
Given all the histrionics, of course, that the media is going to turn this into, the story flavor of the week.
Right.
Ray Lewis plays big in big games.
He does.
That's been his career, and I don't think I think he will play the hardest and best football of his life as long as they're in the playoffs.
Yep.
He's that intense of a player, and when he plays, he elevates the team.
Yeah.
I just don't think the Colts, as much success as Luck has had this year, are going to see any success against the Ravens, especially at home at Baltimore. Again, outdoors and cold, and the Colts play indoors and warm.
Okay.
So I think the home field advantage plus Ray Lewis kind of offsets the Joe Flacco, you don't know what you're going to get every week against Andrew Luck, who's been pretty consistent this year. I think the Ravens just carry this one on the backs of their defense, shut down Luck.
Right.
And drive in 13 to 16 points, and that's enough to win it.
Well, one of the questions, of course, that, anytime you have a rookie in the playoffs, you always wonder whether he's going to, the flash bulbs are going to, blind him, and whether his jitters are going to keep him.
Definitely an unknown, yeah.
Exactly. So that, that's the same question we got to have about Luck. We got to have about Wilson at Seattle. We got to have about RG3.
Overall, though, I think the question's already been answered. These guys came out of the draft and started on a short training schedule with the whole league referee problem and all that kind of stuff. This start of this year was kind of a mess. They came out the gate and they came out strong.
Yeah.
So, of course, it's an unknown, until you actually do it.
Right.
Are you Tony Romo?
Right.
Or are you any quarterback who's any good?
I got a Tony Romo stuck in my throat.
So, I think it's a question mark, but I'd be surprised if that was if that was a story after this first round.
I agree, but you got to hang that out there.
Sure, no, I agree.
Another thing too is that their rush and pass D, Indianapolis is vulnerable, and it's interesting, by the way. They allowed 229 yards from Casey's Jamal Charles. So
but most teams did. To one degree or another.
Right.
That's the one thing Kansas had that was working.
Well, They also have a problem too of being fairly one-dimensional, pass-oriented. They don't seem to really have. They're kind of in a Broncos situation, but worse in terms of having kind of a cattle call of running backs right now. Their highest rushing running back, I think, only has like 450 yards or something like that.
Okay.
So, that's going to make it tough on them. And I note that because, again, Ray Lewis, man, he is great about stuff in the run. He's great about stuff in the pass, but he's also great about stuff in the run. And his presence there could make a huge difference, of course.
Sure.
Reggie Wayne, who was on the team with on the Colts with
Peyton Manning,
Peyton Manning,
many years.
He's been by far the favorite target of Andrew Luck, and that creates a vulnerability. If they're able to, really cover with Ray Lewis back, maybe they feel confident to be, to double team, Wayne throughout the game, shut him down, and then all of a sudden they, really start having a problem, with being a pass-oriented team, being able to even complete passes. On the Baltimore side, though, I mean, they've only won one game in the last five. One game in the last five. So they're really having a slide. Which Flacco are we talking about? I mean, we're
Sure.
always wondering that week to week. And of the veteran quarterbacks, he's got one of the worst records in terms of fumbles and interceptions. Actually, more fumbles than interceptions. But you know what? Funny enough, Andrew Luck also has a problem controlling the ball. He actually has, he is tied with Phillip Rivers, I think, for most number of interceptions. And there's 7 other interceptions, almost interceptions that somebody statistically stayed on top of, which makes him actually the worst at the almost interceptions. So,
Almost interceptions.
I know. If Baltimore can exploit some ball control issues there, too, they also have a good shot. Baltimore has strong but not spectacular receiving. That's a vulnerability that maybe Indianapolis can exploit. And can Baltimore's Ray Rice break big? I think the running game is going to have to be pretty important for Baltimore to give Flacco some room. He doesn't really do well under pressure, and so if they've got a good running game, it opens
Sure.
that whole rigmarole.
On the flip side, they just cycled their offensive coordinator.
Yes.
That did not work out for him.
Exactly.
The team internally is kind of a mess on the offensive side of the ball.
Absolutely.
So,
I think that this is going to be a close game. I'm actually calling it for Indianapolis 24-20. I think that regardless of Lewis coming back, Ray Lewis coming back, I think that there are enough stinky things going on in the team overall that it's going to keep them from being able to win.
okay. All right. Well, that's so I think at this point, I don't think we've agreed on a single pick. So
That's cool.
all right, so the last game of the series for this coming weekend, the Wildcard weekend, and it's appropriate, is the Redskins Seahawks, which I think you and I both talked off, Karen. Should be the most exciting game.
This is going to be the best game. I mean, you're talking about only the second time in playoff history where you've had 2 starting rookies facing off against each other, and these aren't just any rookies; these are top drawer, kick-ass rookies.
Yes.
These guys know, I don't expect any jitters out of them. So, good God, this is going to be a game. And I actually, after I got all my notes done, I sat there for, I waited probably 4 or 5 hours before I finally, kind of processed in the background who I was going to pick. So I'll tell you that in a minute. But I mean, I was really on the fence with this because there are reasons for both teams to win. This is going to be a monster.
Sure. So in my mind, there's some interesting things about this game. First off, they're both outdoor teams. They
Yep.
both play in some stadiums that get some weather at all times of the year. So I don't think there's a field advantage here as far as indoor, outdoor,
Right.
Hot, cold, that kind of thing. I think both teams are accustomed to playing whatever weather Maryland can produce for that game, whether it be rain or snow or anything in between. The Redskins certainly have been hot. They're the second hottest team in the league right now, in my mind. They've been driving out wins. They're cocky. They think they can beat anybody.
And both teams, by the way, are on 5-game winning streaks.
So The Seahawks have played hard. They've earned their way in.
Yep.
They had to play a lot of teams and come back from a slow start. This, in my mind, is the game that's going to be the closest all week. It basically in my mind, it boils down to one question: can the Seahawks stop the read option? And in my mind, the key to beating the read option is not to try to beat it every play. Just beat it enough plays to kill drives.
Yep.
Bend but don't break. The mistake that the Cowboys made last week is they tried to defend every possibility of the read option, tried to defend everything, and ended up defending nothing, and they got to get burned for it. So if the Hawks come out and play smart, and then they adjust to the blitzes, which is something that Dallas didn't manage to do last week,
right,
which is also silly.
Right.
If the Hawks can come out and make some offensive adjustments, and get some points scored, and slow down the read option so that they're only scoring 7 or 3 points every third drive, they'll win that game. If they do what Dallas did, they're going to get rolled.
Well, I tell you what, I don't think there's a tinker's dam in hell that the Seahawks are going to forget about the screen and to defeat
slants
the blitz
and quick passes, everything that defeats the blitz.
Exactly.
So
they are a much better coached team than Dallas is.
Absolutely. Jason Garrett made a mess of that last game.
Yeah, boy. Well, so not only is this the second time that two rookie quarterbacks have faced off, statistically, these two guys are incredibly similar. For example, their passer ratings are within like 1 point of each other. I think RG3's is like 102 and Wilson's like 100 or 101, something like that. RG3 has 815 yards of rushing, and Wilson has like 489, so 800 to 500 yards of rushing. So I didn't realize that Wilson was that much of a rushing quarterback till I really dug into him.
He is a hard man to tackle.
He is a hard man to tackle. And, of course, both of these guys have the wind at their backs in terms of the Cinderella story.
Well, and I think that's going to be the biggest factor of this game. You take away the home field advantage, the field conditions, and what are you left with? Well, I think it's going to be which quarterback can impose his will. They're both cocky, and they both think they can do anything.
Right.
On Sunday afternoon, one of them will be right. Mm-hmm. And the other will not.
Exactly.
So, and that's basically what it's all going to boil down to. But who's that going to be? I don't know. I have the Hawks down for a win. I think they're all around a more solid team. The Redskins have been playing. They've played well lately, but they started off horrible. And I'm just waiting for one thing to go wrong and the team to implode, basically.
My biggest worry about Seattle is they have a very strong defense, but they've shown vulnerability to play fakes from other teams. So they're, unfortunately, that could really work against them.
Sure.
Also, does Seattle have an answer for Alfred Morris? Alfred Morris, I mean, when the hell do you have a team where a quarterback is as good as many running backs, and then you have a running back who can bust out 200 yards?
Absolutely. Well, that read option's been very successful for them.
Yep.
You stop the read option, that's the problem. That's Washington's biggest vulnerability. If you stop the read option or slow it down, that's how they make their money.
Right.
You knock that off the table, or you make it so that time is against them on that.
Right.
Then they don't really have a plan two.
Now, by the way, some good news for Seattle is that Wilson early in the season made an adjustment to running a lot more shotgun plays, and with that change, it had a secondary effect apparently in making them kind of a semi-invulnerable against 5+ man pass rushes. So they're very strong on the pass rushes. And the other side of it, too, is that just to piss everybody off on the other side, when he's on the run, he actually has one of the highest completion percentages on the run outside the pocket of any quarterback in the league.
When he runs, one thing you can watch him do is watch his hip movement. As he runs, he will keep his hips as square as possible to the line of scrimmage as possible.
Right.
So his hips will make turns that his body isn't. And it throws off defenders, first off, but it does keep him in that position where he can strong-arm that ball down there for long yardage passes. And that's just something you don't see young quarterbacks generally doing right.
No doubt. And in the last game, I mean, check this out. In the last game of the season, he completed 8 of 9 passes that he made while on the run.
So, yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all. I saw him do a play early this season, a couple weeks ago, where I was a San Francisco game, where the line was completely broken. He had 4 guys on him.
Right.
And he did that little hip move he does, and he basically made 4 guys miss him until he could figure out a place to throw the ball. At his time. Not like a desperation, I'm sliding out of the field of play.
That's crazy.
So
now, of course, RG3. I mean, now, by the way, he has been cleared. His knee has been cleared. He's not going to be wearing a brace. They've told him that he has no risk of re-injury because it's weak or anything. His LCL is good to go, so he should be at full speed.
Okay.
So, but still, I mean, you and I both, when we were watching the Dallas versus Redskins game, we both kind of noticed he didn't seem 100% even in the passing realm.
No, he definitely seemed a little weak with his footwork. So, but he was still wearing the brace in that game, wasn't he?
Right.
It was a pretty bulky thing.
Yeah. Now, of course, being longtime Broncos fans, we've had a lot of time to see Mike Shanahan. And so I think actually one of the biggest things working against Washington is going to be whether or not Mike Shanahan out-masterminds himself. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, we've actually talked about this a lot off camera. He's too smart for his own good sometimes.
Yes.
The Dallas game's a classic example of they're up late, they just got to run the clock out. A regular sane person would say, well, what do we got that works, that eats up time? Oh, our read option running game.
Right.
Let's run that. But apparently Shanahan must have gone through that thought process and said, oh, but no, Garrett knows that, so I'm going to fool him with all these exotic plays that we haven't run all day.
Right.
And guess what? They almost lost the game.
Exotic pass plays, too. I mean, running, you've got the #1 running offense in the league, and you go to a pass to burn the clock down.
Yeah.
It's total crack.
His son and him are sometimes too brilliant for their own good.
Right.
So, and that is a factor in these games. And we've seen it over the years with Shannon. He does tend to burn himself. And that's why he's no longer here, as a matter of fact.
Right. So, now, another thing, too, is that Washington's pass D is not necessarily the best. No. In fact, it's 30th in the league, I believe.
It's pretty horrible.
Right. I think that's going to be, the difference here.
Okay.
And so, like you, I see Seattle being just a little bit more of a complete team. I think it's going to be a battle of titans. I think there's going to be blood on the field. Everybody's going to be excited.
It's going to be an exciting game.
Yes.
We're going to see 2 great quarterbacks running for their life with all kinds of interesting variants on plays that you traditionally don't see at the pro level.
Right.
So.
I see this one being a 31-28 squeaker. I think it may be a case of having a field goal ball sail through the uprights, in the waning seconds of the game that decides this.
Okay, I would not.
And in Seattle's favor, by the way. I don't think I added that. So yeah, wow. I've underneath this hat, I actually have hair standing up on the back of my neck, thinking about this weekend of football. It's
going to, Of course, in the playoffs, the intensity goes way up. People are playing. The Super Bowl itself, of course, is what everybody wants, but you're playing for more money.
Right.
You get bonuses. There are players like Ray Lewis who are literally playing the last game, guys who have never played in the playoffs who are playing the first. Right. Everybody knows there's something at stake. And the great thing about the elimination format for the NFL is it's one and done. You can't screw up.
Right.
You just not best of 4, best of 5, best of 7. You got to play your best game. You got to show up with a sense of urgency. Every game is your last game until you win the big one. So it's always going to be exciting. The teams here are all well matched. I don't see any 31-3 games here.
No.
Not in the Wildcard Round. These
Hell
teams,
no.
The Ravens game has the opportunity, I think, to be most lopsided. But of the 4 teams that are playing, I think they match up well pretty much across the board. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited.